Now, as most of you know, over 99% of the steel in the World Trade Center buildings was quickly shipped to Asia and melted. It was recycled. This evidence from a crime scene was destroyed. Over the objection of many scientists and engineers,
crucial evidence that could answer the questions is on the slow boat to China, exclaims Bill Manning, editor-in-chief of the 125-year-old Fire Engineering magazine that brings together fire protection engineers to communicate with each other, showing an astounding ignorance of the government officials to the value of a thorough scientific investigation. The destruction and removal of evidence must stop immediately. Commission a fully resourced blue ribbon panel to conduct a clean and thorough investigation is what they were calling for. If the evidence contradicts your fire hypothesis, destroy it. That's where our tax dollars are going.
It was the combination of the impact load doing great damage to the building, followed by the fire, that caused collapse.
What is clear is that this technology must be kept secret at all costs. And so you get this cover-up team saying, for people asking questions, you say, oh, it was thermite, or it was bombs in the building, or it was, give somebody someplace else to go so they quit asking questions.
One of my listeners is wondering, do they use thermite in regular controlled demolitions?
It's not commonly used. RDX and HMX are typically used. These explosives have tags. So you have in there chemicals that tell where the explosive was manufactured. The advantage of thermite is you don't have those tags, but in ordinary demolitions where you're doing things legally, you don't worry about taggants. You don't care if somebody says, "Oh, you bought your explosive at company X over here,"
Right.
Because with thermite there in the World Trade Center buildings, someone might have been worried that there would be these tags in the explosive. Using thermite gets away from that. It's a very common material, on the other hand, used for melting through steel. Not for demolitions.
Number 5. In controlled demolitions of steel frame buildings, explosives are used to slice the steel columns and beams into pieces. A representative from Controlled Demolition Inc. has said of RDX, one of the commonly used high explosives, that it slices steel like a razor blade through a tomato. The steel is, moreover, not merely sliced, it is sliced into manageable lengths. As Controlled Demolition Inc. says in its publicity, our system segments steel components into pieces matching the lifting capacity of the available equipment. Jim Hoffman, after studying various photos of the collapsed site, said that much of the steel seemed to be chopped up into sections that would be easily loaded onto the equipment that was cleaning up ground zero. So just from knowing that the towers came down, one would just naturally assume they were brought down by explosives, since that's the only way they've ever been brought down before.
you know, the first engineering class that students take is statics. And I'm like a drill sergeant with requiring them to give the problem statement, what you're given in the problem, what you're looking for, how you're going about solving it. So you first have to define the problem, and that is the step that gets skipped here. Let's define the problem. What happened? So the towers didn't burn up or slam to the ground, but turn into dust. And we know that because of the lack of debris, but also if they slammed to the ground, there'd be a seismic signal that would reflect that. That didn't happen. There was a small one, but nothing anywhere close to the size it should have been. In Building 7, it was essentially a non-seismic event. A 47-story building crashes to the ground, and it isn't recorded on a seismic chart.
After careful examination of the official explanation of the destruction of these 3 buildings, along with the eyewitnesses' testimony and forensic data that was omitted from the official reports, we, along with other professionals in the 9/11 Truth Movement, have concluded that a new independent investigation into these catastrophic events is both necessary and essential to the preservation of our democracy.
So they mean only that we should reject outrageous theories. But what is the difference between an outrageous theory and a non-outrageous theory? Well, this is one of the main questions in the philosophy of science. When confronted by rival theories, let's say neo-Darwinian evolution and intelligent design, scientists and philosophers of science ask, which is the better theory and why? Well, a good theory is one that will deal with all, or at least most of the relevant facts in a coherent way, can explain them, and is not contradicted by any of the relevant facts. A bad theory is one that is contradicted by some of the relevant facts. An outrageous theory would be one that is contradicted by virtually all of the facts.
Just taking in the observations of what happened, and it's probably pretty frustrating for a lot of people because they've been trained to jump to the answer. But again, as soon as you jump to the answer, you're making assumptions. You're making assumptions about what the problem is that you're solving. And by making those assumptions, you're solving a fictitious problem, not the real problem. So that's why it's so important to lay out what the problem is that you're solving.
Just like any crime scene would inform the right investigators.
Right. And you look at it and it keeps speaking to you. And I wrote my favorite quote in my book. It says, if you listen to the evidence carefully enough, it will speak to you and tell you exactly what happened. If you don't know what happened, keep listening to the evidence until you do. The evidence always tells the truth. The key is not to allow yourself to be distracted away from seeing what the evidence is telling you.
Most of you know, over 99% of the steel was quickly shipped to Asia, This evidence from a crime scene. Over the objection of many scientists and engineers.
She denies that there's evidence of explosions going off, and there's hundreds of witnesses, many of which are in the same DVD. She also cites that most of the steel is missing. A good percentage of it is missing. It's not missing. It's ejected laterally with explosive force, clocked by physicists at 60 miles an hour, laterally. These perimeter steel, structural steel sections, landing 600 feet away. So that this steel is not in its footprint. We agree about that.
My argument is it needs to be investigated. There is another hypothesis here, staring us in the face, of explosive demolition. And okay, you have the hypothesis of fire, but the official reports don't analyze this other possibility of explosive demolition. That is strange. Scientifically, I say it's a viable hypothesis. They look at just the one, and I'm saying good science requires us to consider other hypotheses, in particular the explosive demolition hypothesis. Let's study it out, let's debate it scientifically, let's put it on the table, for heaven's sakes. There's a lot at stake here to understand what caused the collapse of these buildings. We should be able to discuss it dispassionately as scientists. It's hard to do, but we should be able to do that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, certainly it takes time to put these explosives in. We've learned quite a lot. I've just found it fascinating to learn about how controlled demolition is done. They hook these explosives. That could be super thermite, a form of thermite that is explosive. Uses nano aluminum, ultra-fine aluminum. Anyway, when you typically will set the charges on the steel columns at an angle. We've learned quite a lot. I've just found it fascinating to learn about how demolition is done. They hook these explosives. That could be super thermite, a form of thermite that is explosive. Uses nano ultrafine aluminum. Anyway, typically will set the charges on the steel columns at an angle so as to cut through or melt through form of thermite to use. Anyway, you can either explosively cut or just melt your way through an explosion without an explosion. You do ordinary thermite, but you do that at an angle typically so that if you can imagine having this vertical column cutting it at an angle, then the upper column will just basically slide. It's no longer strongly supported. You've weakened the building that way.
Final plans call for a complex of low-level buildings surrounding two 1,350-foot towers, the tallest ever built. Their great height was made possible by the use of load-bearing walls. Extremely tall buildings were traditionally inefficient, since huge amounts of interior space were taken up by structural supports and elevators. The Trade Center towers would overcome this problem. The exterior walls were designed to bear much of the weight of the towers, as well as all of the wind loads. Only internal supports would be in a central core of columns. Elevators would be placed in the shafts formed by the core columns. Meanwhile, orders were placed for the 200,000 tons of steel which would be needed for construction. Individual pieces were prefabricated and rarely interchangeable. Moreover, there would be no room to stockpile materials at the construction site. This created a tremendous logistical problem. Steel sections would have to arrive at the site in the exact order and at the exact time needed. To meet this challenge, Port Authority engineers used a computerized system known as Critical Path Method, or CPM. CPM would coordinate every aspect of construction, track the flow of materials, and minimize any delays.
But after you've collected all of this data, then you start seeing what the destructive mechanism is.
So, what could you speculate about this?
I don't speculate.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that's the key. You have to have discipline to not speculate, because what does speculation do? It gets you nowhere.
Yeah.
Because, I like to say, know what it is that you know that you know that you know, and know that everything else you don't know. And don't fill in that gap with guesses and assumptions and speculation, because you still don't, that doesn't bring you an answer. You don't take someone to court on speculation. So, as I like to say, you keep looking at the evidence, and it'll tell you what happened. You look at it long enough.
But structural damage is not all the building must withstand. Of the 10,000 gallons of jet fuel aboard the aircraft, as many as 3,000 gallons ignite and are consumed within 2 seconds. 4,000 gallons disperse as a fiery vapor cloud.
Those floors are immediately set on fire. All of the carpets, the furniture, any combustible inside the building.
And an engineering autopsy must seek the truth about how and why the buildings fell.
Are changing under us as we're going down.
The collapse of the 110-story towers left a chaotic jumble of material that still burned from the jet fuel fires.
The fire is burning from the bottom because you have so many million square feet of office space that are in those towers. What kind of combustibles are in 1 million square feet of office space? The paper, the furniture, the carpets. The fires got very intense down there and actually melted beams where it was molten steel that was being dug out.
So you're showing a tremendous discipline by sticking to 9/11 and not moving off of it to other areas.
I see other areas, but if you look at one thing in great detail, 9/11 is so significant. It's got everything in it. 9/11 was an attack on human consciousness. People lost the ability to think after that, it seems. Imagine that they see buildings turning to dust in front of them on TV, and they're told it collapsed. Okay, they collapsed. Huh? You know, imagine that. Here's a quote that I've incorporated. In God we trust, all others must bring evidence. 9/11 was an attack on human consciousness and a type of brainwashing. And until you get rid of that brainwashing, people's brains are shut down. In order to understand the material, you have to be deprogrammed to some extent to be able to see it. Otherwise, you just jump to the answer. You're arguing about your opinion about the answer without understanding how to look at things.
There was pieces of their desks and pieces of the photos on their desks and their Rolodexes.
The most powerful artifacts are the ones that symbolize the thousands of lives lost. One day, one of these items may be the single symbol by which future generations remember and come to understand the terrorist attacks.
They actually found my ID from the World Trade Center from the 72nd floor where my office was, and they just got it to me today. This is a World Trade Center ID that I had at my desk, actually. This is something that had my name on it, so they were actually able to identify Peter Rinaldi, Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, and able to get it back to me.
All I remember was the silence of the scene. It was extremely silent. I thought what I expected to see was nothing like what I actually did see at the time of my arrival at the site. There wasn't much that you could say, you could describe. Everything was dust and metal. There was no typewriters, there was no chairs, there was no nothing. Everything had been crushed. I saw it too much. As a matter of fact, things that I'll never forget in my life. If I never see another artifact from the World Trade Center, that would be okay with me also. But it would be unfair for future generations to be cheated out of a piece of history.
People prefer to be told their opinion. In a 5-minute YouTube video, they want to be told their opinion, and then they just repeat it over and over again.